animal activism matters.
Welcome to the Hen Report from our hen house. I'm Jasmin Singer.
And I'm Mariann Sullivan.
And just a quick reminder about the Our Hen House podcasts. As you might know, Rising Anxieties comes out on Tuesdays, the Hen Report, which is this, on Thursdays. Happy Thursday. And the long-form interview on Fridays. Bonus content for flock members comes out on Mondays. And the bonus content is very frequently fabulous, so join us. And yeah, we're a podcast. We're on YouTube. We've been here for a really long friggin' time. And if you're new, welcome. If you're old, welcome. If you're somewhere in between, welcome. So much to discuss this week. And I like that a lot of it is positive.
Yeah, we did find some positive stuff. Sometimes it's a stretch. Not all of it.
Yeah.
But...
You know, I keep seeing all of this about, you know, just kind of when vegans were really on top, like in the 2019, 2020, that there were all of these signs that, you know, 600% more people, 600% more people were Googling veganism, like around 2019, I think, is when Beyond Meat IPO boomed. And I just keep reading about how that was the past and this and that. And now it's, you know, it's back to slightly pathetic. They don't word it that way. But you found an article that begs to differ. Maybe things are turning.
Yeah, well, this is actually from Europe. And I admit, I stole this from, well, not exactly stole, because he doesn't exactly own it. But I watched Chris Bryant's YouTube, and this is where I found this article and the next article, both of which are positive. This one is about Europe, and the title is Plant-Based Price Cap Closes in Europe, Driving Sales. So this is mostly about data that was gathered by the Good Food Institute. And it's not just that the price cap is closing. It's not even there yet. It's not price parity yet. But the driving sales is the important part, that, you know, things are perking up. We went through a real dip. The industry fought us hard. You know, we were a trend for a lot of people, and trends don't last. But things are turning around. So they gathered data from 6 countries: France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Spain, and the UK. Did you say something?
I said the pendulum swings back. It always does.
You're right. And it shows that these price gaps have narrowed, and that sales volume has increased as, quote, products begin to meet consumer expectations. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the other piece of this, is the products are getting better. And, you know, this is it's interesting, because this is the meat analogs. You know, a lot of people were saying, oh, the meat analogs, they were, because of, you know, the troubles that Beyond Meat has been having and Impossible has been having, that wasn't the way to go. And apparently it is the way to go, because it's going pretty well. The meat, the milk too, of course, is, you know, really the main driver. Well, not the main driver of the increase, but it's the plant-based food that has most taken the world by storm. So sales volumes were up in France by 13%. That's pretty unbelievable. And Spain 6.6%, et cetera, et cetera. And they did an analysis of all of the data, and it showed that growth is being driven by improvements in affordability and taste, which is exactly GFI's point. You know, like you make it taste good, you get price parity, and make it available, and, you know, it's going to be fun. They actually have found that tofu, tempeh, and seitan has grown in popularity, just not nearly as much as the meat analogs. And but that also takes care of the people who were like freaked out by the whole processed food thing, because tofu, tempeh, and seitan are minimally processed, I think, even by their ridiculous standards.
I have a question regarding tofu, tempeh, and seitan. In order, rank for me which ones you personally buy.
Oh, tofu.
And then,
like, it's so far ahead. And tempeh is next, but that's because I don't know how to buy seitan. Like, I don't know. It comes just in little packages, and it's like I don't buy seitan. I have it when I'm out, but I don't buy it. And that's not for any good reason, because I really like seitan. Tempeh is a challenge, because I think you have to be kind of a good cook to make tempeh well.
Yeah.
Like, you can't like tofu, you can just cut it up, put it in the air fryer, and it's delicious. Put some sauce on it, and it's delicious. But tempeh, it's has a weird texture. It has to be babied to be really good. Do you remember that when we made that tempeh when we lived in Portland?
I do. That was really good, but
It was
I
the
think
best tempeh I've ever had.
yeah, I do remember that, and that was so good. I'm just not a big tempeh person, but when I was in New York
It's
City
really good for you.
when I was in New York City a few weeks ago and I went to Marisa Miller-Wolfson's house, she made me tempeh bacon, and it was amazing. So,
Oh,
yeah,
I have
and
to
I
go down
saw
to
how
New
she
York.
made it, so I might rethink that, but I'm also a big tofu person, and you said you just cook it up. You could also microwave it, right? You can microwave tofu.
Uh,
Uh,
I don't I guess I mean, I have tofu a lot, and, I've made it in every possible way, but I usually air fry it. Though I will also, steam it. Like, I'll
yeah.
steam vegetables and tofu together. I don't usually put it in the microwave, but certainly I have. I've
Well,
done everything with it.
I don't put it in the microwave, like, by itself, but if I'm making a soup or something that all you have to do is heat it up or something like that, I might cut up tofu and throw it in and then microwave it as part of it. It's always good. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, it's really good. But you just mentioned the, like, processed foods and this next article that you found also by way
Also,
of
Chris Bryant found
Chris
it.
Bryant. Thank you, Chris Bryant. Which is from Green Queen, and it's about how the Trump administration is finding it difficult to land on a standardized definition of ultra-processed food. This is according to the FDA's acting deputy chief, and he reiterated that the agency therefore doesn't plan to ban these products, and that's great because that
Well,
was
this whole thing has been such a fiasco.
seriously, yeah,
All right, this article is by Anay Mriddle, and, yeah, it's entitled, "FDA admits defining ultra-processed foods is, quote, challenging, says it won't ban them." I mean, I don't know whether defining them is actually challenging or whether they just screwed up the definition so much that, that's challenging to understand what they were talking about. And, so they wanna have a standardized definition, and they've realized that, because ultra-processed foods, like actual ultra-processed foods, all the stuff that, was formerly known as junk food, that is bad for you, except that their definition that they put in, like, brought in all of these foods that there's no reason to believe are bad for you at all, and that experts all over the place were warning against this idea that they conflated processing with nutrition, which happens when you put an idiot in charge of, Health and Human Services. Like, that's what happens. Like, there's processing and there's process I mean, cooking is processing. Like, there's lots of processing that's totally fine.
lesbians
Uh
process all the time, for example. It's totally fine, although I will say my wife would probably wanna ban that type of processing.
Yeah, well, me too. Um, so ultra processed foods is like they is made up of industrial formulations and techniques and thought of food. It's kind of actual ultra processed foods are foods that you can't uh that are basically junk food, but defining them as foods that you just can't make in your home kitchen or that have to be that doesn't make them bad for you. It's just way, as this article says, too broad a brush to paint food with.
Mm,
So this total lack of consistency has been a disaster. It's been a disaster for the plant-based food movement, which I think may have been the whole reason for it. But call me
right.
paranoid. I am.
No,
Um,
that was my first thought too. I mean, they'll do
well, I'll call you
anything.
paranoid too.
Well, I think that I realize that I'm a pessimist, but I would call myself a realist first before I call myself that. I think that I have a very grounded way of looking at things,
Well, good for you.
and I'm really just extraordinary. Like, the way my brain works is just
Seriously.
it's phenomenal. Yeah,
Um,
well, this is good news.
yeah,
And
the article points out that some plant-based alternatives to meat and milk offer protein with more fiber and less saturated fat than animals. And as I've always said, I'm going to say it again. Someday I'm going to get credit. Somebody else is going to say this, and I'm going to get credit for it. That meat, milk, and eggs is just perfectly good grains and greens and other plant foods processed through the body of an animal to add saturated fat and cholesterol. That's all it is. It's totally processed food.
Yep.
Um, but RFK Jr. himself has described ultra-processed foods as, quote, poison. That's how we got in this whole stupid thing, because he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he does and he's evil, or both.
You're not gonna get credit for that, by the way. Some white man
No,
is.
I know I'm not. I'm not.
Although, I have been in situations lately, like more and more, where an idea, I know you've been dealing with this forever, but like an idea that maybe stemmed from me kind of goes through the rigmarole, and then someone else is like, I have an idea, and it's the idea I started with. And I have gotten to the point where I'm like, cool, that's fine. Like I'm not gonna
I
die on
am
this hill.
too. It's like you don't know whether you were the starting point, because other people come up with good ideas too. And even if you were, it's kind of like your whole theory of what the hell if all my writing goes into
AI. Yeah.
AI,
Yeah.
because then it's out there, and people maybe somebody will learn something like.
Right. I also just think that there's no such thing as a new idea ever. But, it's
Oh,
just
that's a new
no,
idea
no.
to me.
Let me caveat that. So
Please do. Please do. I
our
think it uses some caveats.
okay, our long form interview this week is Joanne Molinaro. It's coming out tomorrow,
I
and
know.
she is, of course, the Korean vegan, and I love her. I loved this interview.
Yeah, she is
It was
great.
just truly phenomenal, and I don't remember if it was for the main interview or for bonus, but you were basically like, "How did you break through in this extraordinary successful way?" And she said it was luck and, like, right place, right time, and we corrected her and was like, "There's quite a lot of skill as well, Joanne," you
Right.
know? Like,
But
she
it
was
is true
but it
that
is
there are
true.
other really good vegan cookbooks, and hers just went mainstream.
And I
So some
and
luck was involved, though it also had to be a really fabulous
I
book to grab
and
hold of that luck.
And I just so to the point of there's no new ideas, I do think that, like, sometimes the people whose ideas, wind up sticking, there is a degree of luck. My first book came out because of luck, and, which isn't
Oh, luck
to
is always involved.
yeah, but I'm sure
Yeah,
lots of
and
people had
frequently
that idea.
white people just happen to get more luck than others.
Right, although
Just
Joanne's not white, but yes, in
no,
my
I was
case.
talking more generally, not about
Yes, of
Joanne.
course. No, more and I, my wife and I say, whenever we say we jokingly say, "Let's manifest it," and that's like our code for white privilege. Like, it's very funny in our house when, like, we're watching TV and someone says, "And then I manifested that," and they're a white person, like, "Uh-huh, you
What are
manifested
you
it."
watching?
I watch terrible TV.
Seriously.
Like, terrible, like, reality shows and, like, and books. I do listen to some smart books, but I also listen to total junk, like, the junk food version of books. I started listening to a book about a bunch of 50-year-olds who went on a cruise that was being, headlined by a boy band that they were into when they were, like, 10. And I was like, this is literally my era. Like, I was into New Kids on the Block when I was, young, and so the author, Emma Straub, apparently did research for this book by going on a cruise that the New Kids on the Block were headlining. I
Okay.
think I would love that. Anyway, the point is I watch junk. All right. Uh, the point
That
is
was a really long journey to get to that point.
every time I go on a little journey, I think of our, flock member slash recent guest, Neha, because she came through. She's a scientist, and she came through Rochester, and we had a dinner with her and her partner, and she kind of, like, pulled me aside and was like, "I love it when you go on tangents. I don't care what anybody says."
Oh
So,
God.
every
All
time I
right.
go on a tangent, I'm like, "Neha, this is for you."
All right, folks, don't blame me. Blame
All
me,
right,
huh?
so let's move on. Speaking of the Trump administration, which we were just speaking of, I know this is kind of a big story, but
This is a huge story.
yeah, and
Huge.
as reported by NPR, although it's reported everywhere, their environmental groups sue government to stop a big change to the Endangered Species Act, and this is basically saying that by altering the interpretation of one word in the Endangered Species Act, the Trump administration has made what could be a sweeping change to how wildlife is protected in the United States. Why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, that is to say the least. And as this is unbelievable. I mean, industry has been trying to change this for 50 years, and they have failed. They've gone to the Supreme Court. They've failed, but now that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is on their side, this is very bad. The Endangered Species Act makes it illegal to take a member of an endangered species. Now, you may wonder what take means, but the statute actually defines what they mean by take, and it says to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, or collect, or attempt to engage in any such conduct. The big word in there is harm. That's the most general word. And the Fish and Wildlife Service, as happens with the federal statutes, the Congress passes the statute, and then the Fish and Wildlife Service offers additional interpretations and regulations of what it all means. And they define the term harm to include significant habitat modification or degradation that kills or injures wildlife. All right, I know I'm speaking in like legal terms, but what this basically means is that this is the whole Endangered Species Act. This is how it works. Like, it's not just whether you go out and shoot an eagle; it's whether you destroy the habitat that the eagle has to have in order to live. And there are loads of people out there, like mining companies and people who want to build mini malls and put up. I mean, gazillions of people making money, people who want to graze their cattle, who want to do things that will degrade land that endangered species need in order to continue to breed and live and survive. And they've just taken the Fish and Wildlife Service has just changed the regulation to remove that from the definition. So now all it means is like if you go out and shoot an endangered species or something along those lines, not if you destroy their home, as if that doesn't harm them. And
That's
this is
insane.
like virtually every case under the Endangered Species Act is about harming them through ruining their habitat. And it's a disaster of monumental proportions. But because it gets kind of legally and because it's about wild animals, I don't think that many people are really paying attention, except people who are in this world and who really care about this stuff. But this is a disaster. I mean, there's a lawsuit. There's a lawsuit going on. So, you know, this is due to go into effect in September. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the courts have been holding this country together with a little thread and scotch tape, and I hope they're going to do it here because the amount of harm that they're already doing. I mean, with like destroying the national parks and like giving away all this land, and it's just this is not stuff that can be fixed once they're
Mm.
gone, and they're going to be gone, but it's going to be done, and they know that.
Do
And
you,
they're making money hand over fist.
so what is your projection for how this will go?
I don't know. I
You
don't. I
don't?
don't. I don't indulge in that sort of thing. It depends. It just depends. But it'll go to the courts. Hopefully, it depends a lot on who gets the case. But they tried it once before. But that was a different situation. It wasn't the same legal situation. But they've been trying to get rid of this constantly since the beginning of time. And it's very bad. And I don't know it depends on who gets the case first, depends on the appeals court. But then after that, it goes to the Supreme Court. It's
Yeah.
bad. It's bad.
Well, hopefully there will be a situation of, as we've been talking about this year at least, strange bedfellows and people who are able to come together on all sides around this issue, because I think that caring about this particular issue and animal issues in general can, as we say, run the gamut of the political spectrum, which is what this next story is about from Vox, as reported by the brilliant Kenny Torella. Where would we be without Kenny Torella? And
I honestly don't know.
this is about the Save the Bacon Act. And he says it's the unlikely cause bringing liberals and conservatives together. And I find a lot of hope in this, in especially in light of the story that we just covered.
Yeah, I don't know whether there's a divide between Democrats and Republicans, or whether they're, on at all on the endangered species issue, because it's not going to Congress, so there's no discussion of that. It's going to the courts, but that would be interesting. But yeah, all right. He gives you these 4 quotes at the beginning of this article. What talking about the Save the Bacon Act, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. They're trying to get rid of uh, California's law that basically bans gestation crates. This is demonic stuff. It's downright abusive. That sounds like torture to me. It's inhumane. It causes physical problems and psychological anguish. And then he points out these comments were from far-right commentator Mike Chernovich, Fox News host Tomi Lahren, um, liberal New York Times columnist Nick Kristof, and Representatives Nancy Mace and Veronica Escobar. Of course, Nancy Mace, Republican, Veronica, and not long for this world. I don't mean she's going to die. I mean she's not going to be in office anymore. And Veronica Escobar, who's a Democrat of Texas. So I thought that was a great way to start the article, because it is true, and it's just something that we've always said here, that it's the only bipartisan issue left. Like the people on both sides of the aisle are really sympathetic to animals. And it says, for decades, the meat industry has been able to reliably depend on congressional Republicans going to bat for its interests. But the fight over gestation crates now shows that previously solid support may be crumbling at the edges. Taken together, the building opposition to gestation crates demonstrates how animal welfare, often considered a largely liberal concern, has become increasingly bipartisan. And there have always been people on the right, but it's in ascendancy more now. One of the reasons he points out is that because the industry, why the pig industry is fighting so hard to keep gestation crates is unclear. A lot of people opine it's just because they're stubborn and they don't want to be beaten, because a lot of people, they can easily make an enormous amount of money off of these poor creatures without gestation crates. But one of the things that they've done, and this is so easy for us to forget, is that they brought the issue, and our movement has done an unbelievable job of bringing this issue to the forefront and making it a thing. So the people in Congress became aware of it. And people in Congress don't know what a gestation crate is. They had no idea. Like we're so embedded in this that we think that people understand what's going on. People in Congress don't understand what's going on, and they had no reason to have to. They just were like, oh yeah, the pig industry, good for America. And then they found out what gestation crates are, because the pork industry is pushing this so hard, and because we're pushing back so hard. And they're like, oh my God, this is terrible. Just like anybody else would, seeing a gestation crate who's not a complete psychopath. And it turns out not everybody in Congress is a complete psychopath, which is, surprising and good news.
I wonder if they've been nudged toward that, because one of the stories we wanted to talk about today is, as reported by Sentient Media, in fact, we have 2 Sentient Media stories to cover, is actually about nudge theory. And, I've definitely been called a nudge probably every day of my life.
I don't think that's the same thing.
It's not the same thing.
What is that? Is that a Yiddish expression?
It sure sounds like
it's
it.
nudge, isn't it? Nudge. You're such a nudge.
You're such a nudge.
God, I haven't heard of that word in a long time.
Well, hang out with me and you'll hear it a lot. But this is, you're right. This is a little bit different, but there's an overlap. I think that they are exploring through some various studies and an interview with an expert on this, on nudge theory, whether nudges toward plant-based foods as a cheap shortcut to dietary change is legitimate. And there's conflicting information here.
Yeah, I mean, nudge theory, of course, has taken this movement by storm, and doing amazing work, Greener by Default and other organizations. Basically, that whole theory of you just put the plant-based option in the most available place in the cafeteria, or even make it necessary to ask for the animal-based option. and people will, without thinking about it, they'll just eat it. They'll just choose it and eat it. And it's been very successful in a lot of trials. And this author, um, is Seth Milstein. He's certainly not against that. He's just quoting this guy who did this research on it, Seth Ariel Green. He's a research scientist at Stanford University's Humane and Sustainable Food Lab. And he is not against nudge theory, but I really think that he has some points. I don't know about his research, but he thinks they can play a valuable role. But he doesn't think they're a silver bullet. He doesn't think that this is all you have to do. And it's similar to the whole GFI, Good Food Institute kind of thing. Build it and they will come kind of theory that you just have to manipulate people. And he said, the research is it. One of the things he points out is that the organizations or cafeterias or whatever that put this into effect were the organizations that were willing to put this into effect. And that skews you right from the start because they're going to be more friendly. And he also pointed out that it's much more work than people think it is. It's kind of touted as being simple. It's not that simple. It's expensive and there's a lot of effort in implementing it. And New York City hospitals are famous for having done this really effectively. But he points out that it really required a lot of work. And of course, that was the point where Mayor Eric Adams was in office. And of course, his reputation was sullied.
A little bit.
We won't go into that. But he was a vegan almost. And he really pushed this. So,
Yeah. So basically, the upshot is that it can be a valuable way of laying the groundwork for bigger change, but the real change then happens when you're changing people's minds. And
yeah, which I think is, that there is no silver bullet. I think that's the point, and I think it's very valid. There is still an enormous amount of work to be done. Even when you make the food more available, that doesn't, it can play a role, but it's not the only role in this huge theatrical endeavor of changing the way people eat. And this is a quote I marked out. The actual uncomfortable thing I want to confront people with is that we need to convince people of meat's downsides. And that's really hard. And we all know that. And we all want that not to be true. But it's true. Like animal activism matters.
It matters. Yeah. I am sad about the upshot of this story because I'm here for the manipulation.
Well, but he's not saying it doesn't work.
I know
he's just saying
not.
It's not enough.
Right. It's just that
I think it's so true that there's just no one thing. It involves a whole lot of different efforts. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're right. And that there is hope in that. I'm just like on my more curmudgeonly days, which is a lot of them. I just sort of think that most people are not willing to change. And obviously that's not true because we've interviewed thousands of people and they've all changed and we've changed and people are able to. I just like sort of a core belief of mine is to not talk to someone assuming that they will change about something. And that is in direct conflict with my activist self, who's always trying to get people to change their minds. And so it's an inner conflict that this article made worse. So thank you for that.
Well, on that happy note, let's move on.
On that happy note. Okay, but Sentient also has this story about Denmark's quote pig election. Why don't you talk about that?
Belying what you just said.
Okay, go for it.
How Denmark's pig election rewrote factory farm politics. Could animal welfare and clean water motivate American voters? All right, this is by Emily Payne. And I think most people listening to this probably somewhat aware that Denmark has a big pig farming industry, but you might not, for such a tiny country, it's unbelievable. It's like 6 million people. There's only 6 million people in the whole country, and they produce 28 million pigs per year. It's a huge part of the Danish economy. And astoundingly, the prime minister announced this historic program aimed at shifting the industry away from ultra intensive, and they are intensive, really intensive confinement, export-driven factory farming. And there were a lot of issues, the environment and they didn't want to be completely dependent on this industry. But one of the quote here, one of the biggest lessons from Denmark's campaign has little to do with money, politics, or policy. Keep the message focused on the animal. Because they found that the best arguments they had was getting people to think about what the animals were going through. This Britta Rees, who's the chief executive officer of Animal Protection Denmark, which basically pulled this off. We thought we would have to make really complicated arguments. Suddenly, it was just about the pig.
That's good. That's great.
It does point out it was also about water, which was a huge issue, and some pollution. But the big thing was the pigs. And they made Animal Protection Denmark started this process a few years ago, and they made a really big investment in communications and public affairs messaging around the animal welfare issues. They got a lot of media coverage. Of course, this is a very small country compared to the U.S., so it's a different proposition. They did a citizens initiative, which triggered a parliamentary debate, so that got it into the newspapers a lot more. By the March election, 53% of polled Danish voters said that animal welfare would definitely influence how they cast their ballots.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, this is really impressive.
I'm going on an emotional journey today, aren't I? Because now I'm
the article then does
again.
say that whether the same playbook could work in the United States is less certain. I think it's less certain, but I think that there are really important lessons here.
Yeah, especially given, what we were talking about a few minutes ago about how this is reaching people at all ends. So.
Well, actually, there's a quote here from Liam Gray, who's the founder of the Wilberforce Institute, which is a conservative nonprofit animal advocacy organization. And he pointed out that historically animal welfare has been seen as a left versus right issue, but increasingly in the U.S., it is about people versus special interests. And that is motivating on both sides of the aisle, at least with some people.
And while we're overseas, let's stay there for a minute. This is a story that we have covered before. In fact, we interviewed Jordi Casamajana from veganfta.com about this because Jordi was the one that originally got this going. But European courts have confirmed that ethical veganism is a protected philosophical belief in Europe. And if you want to hear more about that, definitely check out our interview with Jordi. We'll put it in the show notes. And this is good. This is good. This is a great story. And it's not like a huge shift from before, but it does strengthen the case that.
Yeah, it was. I won't spend a lot of time on it. I just think it's really great news. It was basically about prisoners, which frequently these cases about the rights of vegans come up in a situation where the government is controlling what people eat, and the courts frequently recognize that you have a fundamental right to be a vegan, and the government can't be feeding you dead animals if you're in their custody. So that is excellent news.
Excellent news indeed. And I want to end on excellent news. This was more positive news than not. So great curation. Thank you for that. And thank you for those of you who are listening and watching. We hope that you'll stay tuned because tomorrow we have our long form interview with Joanne Molinaro, the Korean vegan. You won't want to miss it. And then on Monday, the bonus content with Joanne is coming out for our flock. So if you're in the flock, stay tuned for that. If you're not in the flock, consider joining us at ourhenhouse.org/support. On Tuesday, Rising Anxieties comes out, and we always love that one. The Hen Report, which is this, comes out on Thursdays. So thank you for being with us as we are all working together to try and change the world for animals, and we'll talk to you next time.